Hey knitters, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this gorgeous shawl in just 4 easy steps. Stay with me. Hello knitters, it's Nancy Queen from NobleKnits and I'm here to show you how to make this large one skein shawl. And the best part is that any knitter can knit this. This is a beginner project, diagonal shawl, but the magic comes in is that you are knitting it on the bias by just making one increase. We start here at this little corner and we just increase on one side until you get this really large bottom. So there's no decreasing that goes into this, and this increased side becomes the top of your shawl. So it looks like you knitted diagonally, but really you just added an increase. And I'm going to show you how to do that step by step in 4 easy steps. So if you want to become a better knitter, click subscribe and let's get started. I'm using Lion Brand's Shawl in a Ball cake, or Shawl in a Cake. And what I like about this yarn is that it's a self-striping yarn, and you can pull it from either the outside or the inside depending on the color. It comes in a lot of really fun colors, and it shows you the progression of the yarn right on the label. So in this case I'm going to be pulling from the outside because I want it to start with this color and work towards the longer rows being in the darker shades. So I'm going to work from the outside in as opposed to starting at the center with this little pull and working out, but it's totally up to you. This is a worsted weight yarn, also known as a number 4 yarn by the Craft Yarn Council. So any worsted number 4 medium weight yarn will work, but you want to make sure that you buy enough yardage. So this is 481 yards. And we're probably going to use almost the entire skein. This yarn actually calls for size 8 needles. I'm showing straight needles. However, I recommend that you work on circular needles, and I'll get into how to do that. It's not scary, but the reason you want to work on circular needles is because you're going to be having hundreds of stitches on the needle, and it will make it a lot easier. In fact, if you want to start on straight needles, go ahead and start. But by the end, you might feel like you have way too many stitches smashed on the needle. And if that happens, you just switch to circular. So I will take the guesswork out of working on a circular needle for you so that hopefully you will consider using those. You're also going to need a locking stitch marker, a pair of scissors, and a tapestry needle to weave in the yarn ends when you're done. So let's clear everything out and get started on this. Like I said, I'm going to be working from the outside, so I can take this ball band off and just take my yarn and get cast on. I like to leave a tail about 12 inches just to make sure that I have enough yarn to weave in at the end. So begin by making a loop for your slip knot. The top of the loop you're going to bring behind your work like that, and now you're just going to pull it up, and there's your slip knot. And we'll put the slip knot on the needle with the tail in the front. And you just tighten that up. Make it tight enough that it's secure on there, but you want to also make sure that you can easily glide your stitches on the needle. And now we're going to cast on 3 stitches. In this case, we already have 1 stitch on the needle. That slip knot is our first stitch. Now we're going to cast on 2 more. So I'm going to do a long tail method. So I come in between the tail and the yarn ball, and then I grab the rest of the stitches. So I have my thumb on the tail and my finger on the yarn ball yarn, and I hold this yarn to I hold this stitch to kind of stabilize everything. And I flip my thumb and finger back, I come in under the thumb, go over the finger, and go back through the hole where the thumb was. And that's my first stitch. Lean them back, come under the thumb, over the finger, back into the thumb, and tighten. So there's my 3 stitches. And now we're going to knit our first stitch. So since we have a circular needle, I'm just going to bring this over and treat it as if it is a regular straight needles. And I'm just going to knit that first row. Okay, now we are going to start with the pattern, and the pattern is increase at the beginning of this row, and then the next row you just knit straight across. So we're going to increase into this first stitch. So we knit the stitch, and then instead of sliding it off the needle, I'm going to bring my top needle, my right needle, behind the left needle, and now I'm going to knit that stitch and slide it off the needle. Now that was an increase made, and you can see the increased stitch, and there's a little kind of purl bump right there that's created on an increased stitch, and that makes it very easy to identify whether you've done an increase if you're looking back at the rows. And then you just knit the rest of the stitches in the row. Now we are going to knit the next row. Okay, now we're back to an increase row. So to increase, before I do that, I'm going to take my locking stitch marker and place it on this side of the work so that I know that this is the side that I'm always going to increase on. And I use a locking stitch marker because you can move it up as you work. It's just a little bit easier. So now we're going to make that increase again. So I go into the stitch. Before I take it off, I go around behind and go into that stitch from the other side. Now I knit that stitch and my increase is made. Knit the rest of the row. And now this next row is just knit. So the entire thing is knit every row except for that increase that you make at the beginning of every other row. So there you can get a really nice rhythm down with it. It's going to go fast. So I'm going to knit a few more rows and then check in with you. Here's my increase. Okay, now I'd like to check in and see how you're progressing. How are things going? Does your knitting look like this? It should be this triangle shape that you're getting here. And right here you can see this is the increase side of the work. I have my stitch marker over here to remind me that when I'm on this side I'm going to increase. And over here, this is just where we start a straight row of knitting. Now what's going to happen is this increase edge becomes the top of your shawl. So this is what your shawl is going to look like. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as you knit and you increase. I did have a knot in my yarn, so that's why you see this abrupt color change. But as you can see with the shawl and a cake yarn, there's a really nice transition in the colors. It's really pretty to watch, a lot of fun to watch the colors change as you knit. So let's keep knitting. Okay, so I am back to my final row and I just want to show you how much yarn I have. Really not that much. I just have a few yards left, and I always like to make sure I have enough to get across this really long row. So that's what's left here on this very large shawl, and I'm going to start binding off. Now I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so you're going to knit the first stitch, knit the second stitch, and take the first stitch up and over that second stitch. And then you're going to repeat that. So I'm going to knit the next stitch, take this one up and over. Knit the next stitch, take this up and over. And you're just going to keep repeating this across the row. Now what I want to let you know is make sure that you're not too tight on this, because if you're too tight, then the overall length of that side of the shawl is going to be tight and look awkward. So what some people do if they have a problem casting off too tight is they switch to another needle for this needle, and they knit onto one that's maybe 1 or 2 sizes larger so that they don't have that problem. So you could try that if you feel like you're tight. What I do is I tend to give a little extra slack, and I don't pull up after every stitch. I just kind of let it be loose. Okay, now I'm down to my last stitch. So I'm going to knit that last stitch, lift the previous one up and over. And now what do I do with that last stitch? Just going to take a pair of scissors and cut it, leaving a 4 to 6 inch tail. And then all you do is you can actually take the needle away and you're going to pull this yarn through the loop. And that's it. Now you're going to weave in the yarn ends. So I just use a tapestry needle or finishing needle, and I'm going to weave in the garter pattern. So it's kind of a duplicate stitch is what you do when you're weaving in garter. So you can see my tail is here. I'm just going to come up on one of these stitches, and then I'm going to follow the row of purl bumps. So I came out here, so I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to keep following that. And you do that for maybe 4 to 6 stitches, depending on how much thread you have. The idea is to have it in there so ingrained that this thread isn't going to come loose and unravel. So what I do, I've done a few stitches, and then what I like to do is I kind of like to go back the opposite direction a few stitches and follow that. And that's it. Now I'm going to cut it really close to the end of the work, being careful not to cut the work. And you can't even see that. That tail has been woven in, and you're going to do that with your starting tail. And if you had any breaks in the yarn, you're going to weave in those ends exactly the same way. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Thanks so much.